I want to welcome everyone to Home Impodcast. My name's Adam, and we just wanted to let everyone know that before you listen to this pilot episode, it was our first time recording, so the sound quality isn't spectacular. And in general, I would say the episode is not of the quality that perhaps we've gotten to, now that we're seasoned vet with 8 or 9 episodes under our belt. Would you tend to agree, Jordan?
I would definitely agree. We've made a lot of strides in the last few episodes as far as getting better audio quality, upgrading our equipment, and I think it's a more enjoyable experience all the way around. One thing that didn't change, though, or won't change, will be our jokes. Those don't improve.
No, those will stay the same. But we just basically wanted to say, don't give up after hearing this first episode, even the first couple minutes of this episode, because it does get better. And we improve, and we hope you'll join us on our journey through 200 plus episodes of home improvement. So without further ado, enjoy.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Home Impodcast time!
That's right. A Bin for Tools Like Company is proud to present a home improvement podcast. My name is Adam, and I'm joined by my co-host Jordan. Jordan, how's it going?
It's going pretty dandy. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. After week of planning, we're finally here. Our own home improvement podcast entitled Home Impodcast. It's exciting. These are good times.
We made it.
So today, as most things do, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start with the pilot episode. But before we get into the specifics of the aptly named pilot episode, we want to talk a little bit about ourselves and our relationship to the show and to each other. So, Jordan, we've been friends since we were but young men, middle school to high school age. We've long talked about recording a podcast. We've thrown out some ideas, some good and some bad. A Rodney Dangerfield podcast was in the works for a period, perhaps not in the works, but it was something we talked about, among other things. But we've settled on home improvement and the Home Impodcast. It's a show that we sort of grew up with. Being set in Detroit or suburban Detroit was sort of close to us. We like the show, but we don't love the show. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's just sufficiently likable enough that we aren't already obsessed with it, so we don't necessarily know everything about it. This year will be the 25th anniversary of the show's first episode, so I think that's that's just serendipitous, I would say. And I think it'll make for a good topic for us to deep dive into and learn more about and build on some previous knowledge that we have.
Yeah, and we're fans of podcasts and television show podcasts, the Twilight Pone, Signcast, other television shows, and there was definitely an opportunity with home improvement. We did some searching, and the only home improvement podcasts out there are like DIY, HGTV kind of podcasts. And assuredly, this is not that. We won't be able to offer any tips for actual home improvement. We're just going to be talking about Tim and Jill and Brad and Wilson and the gang. So.
Yeah, do not ask us what to do with an awl or how to fix most things around the house, because it's just going to be a recipe for disaster.
Quick aside, Jordan, open floor plan or closed spaces? Which do you prefer?
Always open. Always open. Yeah. I like the clear sight lines, looking into the future when I hope to have 3 young Taylor boys of my own. I want to be able to see what they're doing.
Yeah, and we've always bonded over our love of crown molding as well. So
absolutely.
All right, so this first episode is, as I've said, the pilot. It aired September 17th, 1991. Wow, so old. Directed by John Pasquin, written by Carmen Finestra. This episode is not available on Netflix, despite what I thought and what I told you prior to us sort of committing to this podcast. But it is available via Amazon Video. You can find it on various shady streams. Available on YouTube. A fellow by the name of Don Rags, RAGGS, has uploaded a handful of videos, and we're not advocating for that, but those are available, and that is thanks to Don Rags. And we recommend that you watch them if you want to sort of follow along with us. But we're going to go ahead and break down the episode. work our way through the plot and then sort of talk about our opinions and so on. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I also wanted to say that you can sometimes get them at the library, so that might be a good source to check them out. Yeah. And they're pretty affordable. I think you can get like season 1 for $10 on Amazon, like just sent to you. So that's not too bad. It goes without saying that you're probably going to want to listen to or watch the episodes before we talk about them, because it's going to be real spoiler heavy. Yeah,
and if you don't want to watch the episodes but you still want to listen, that's okay. We just want you to listen. All right, so starting here, we're relying on IMDb. There are not a lot of Home Improvement's not one of those shows that seems to be like well embraced by the internet. There's not a lot of stuff out there. IMDb is probably where a lot of the information that we're going to be using comes from. So we're starting with the storyline, which is very minimal. So the one-sentence summary according to IMDb is this: Tim makes the dishwasher more powerful. Jill has a job interview. So I looked at that prior to watching the actual episode, and I thought, well, there's got to be more to it than that. But there was not. That was essentially what happened in this episode. It was very much very, very small in scope, very few characters, not a lot of conflicts working their way in just the one primary one. So that's a storyline, the one sentence, and we're gonna work our way through the plot. So, Jordan, how do we open?
The first scene of the show is actually kind of it's almost a mind-blowing thing where you have Tim Allen, who plays Tim, as a host of a home improvement show, and what he's doing, he's sitting in his house and he's trying to get his wife and his 3 kids to watch a recently recorded episode of Tool Time that it's kind of a meta, real, a show within a show type of atmosphere at this point.
Yeah, we start like it's Tool Time, the fictitious show on the television, and then and we think that we're watching just Tool Time, but then it pulls back and it's Tim watching it on the television, desperately trying to convince his 3 children, Brad, Mark, and Randy, to watch it with him, or his wife, and they're just not into it. They're not buying it. And, you get the idea that this is something that Tim's trying to do every time the show's on, or maybe this was just a special episode. I don't know, but they are not interested in it. And Tim comes across as a bit of a narcissist here, wouldn't you say?
A little bit, and I was wondering that to myself, like, is this a special, anniversary episode? And it doesn't seem like the first episode of Tool Time. And the only content that we really get from this episode is that they're trying to, I believe, install a door lock or something like that. So it's not like anything spectacular. So who knows how many times he's done this. But after failing to corral his kids who just want to be running outside, we should say they're all pretty close in age. What would you say? What ages would you say they are?
I would say maybe Brad is 10. Randy a little bit younger, Mark is 7-ish. Mark's definitely the youngest, and that comes across pretty early on. As the plot moves forward, there's a scene where Randy he's got Mark hanging from a wooden playset area or something. So Mark is very much the youngest, and perhaps he's bullied by the older ones. But yeah, there's the 3 boys and the wife, and they. The 2 older boys don't really play a major role in this episode, but Mark definitely does. Tim's trying to get his family to watch the show. They're not really interested in it. Moving on, we go back into the television again. Tim is back on Tool Time. He's joined by his co-star, his compadre, his assistant, Al Borland, who plays a very small role in the pilot. He's only in this scene. And they have a back and forth. They are making butt crack jokes. They're at about this episode relies pretty heavily on butt crack jokes, I would say. Maybe like a 4-to-1 ratio, butt crack joke for every couple of minutes, and that'll be how the series goes moving forward. Kind of, it's sort of it's a lowbrow form of humor at times, definitely, and the butt crack jokes sort of solidify that. So they're working on something related to locks, perhaps. And Tim is with Al, and Al wants to use a specific kind of drill, but Tim is not on board with that. He wants something with more power, something bigger and better. And I think we have a clip of that.
Men, we want a job done right, and we want it done quick. What do we need? More power! Darn right, more power. Thank you, Lisa. Now there's raw power!
So Tim does a lot of impressions of women and men, and talks about the dichotomy between marriage, and it's not especially flattering. It's a lot of like shrewish female voices, and we cut back to Tim and Jill watching the show on television, and Jill expectedly being upset by this perceived housewife, right?
Yeah, she doesn't take kindly to his puppet hand, like aggressively chomping at his face with a, like you said, a shrewd voice, a loud, obnoxious voice. So but she also quickly forgives Tim as they have a little bit of a playful banter, and he like tackles her on the couch, but she likes that, I guess. Something in that sort of nature, and it quickly transitions into kind of like a non-fight atmosphere. And at that point, she informs him that she's going to be leaving soon for her interview, which she talked about before, which Tim does not remember at all. She had mentioned it several times, but he obviously wasn't listening.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Tim and Jill. At this point, what do you think of them as a couple? Are you buying it? The fight? Things dissipated pretty quickly. Did you find that convincing? What is your take of them, the wrestling, and just the general rapport?
I don't know. It seems relatively real. It seems like it's obviously a relationship based on funny jokes and playfulness and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It seems like genuine chemistry to me. You have a different take.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that he really, and this was like a concern of mine coming in, because like when I was young, I just thought of like Tim as being so funny and just a good dad and a good guy, but he's not real respectful to women at all. I mean, he wanted his wife to like sit down and watch this show. Like in the beginning, he was trying to convince her to watch it, and then he spends the first 5 minutes of the show just doing annoying voices of women and wives, and talking about like how women don't respect that men need more power. I don't know. I didn't find the Tim of this pilot episode to be as likable as I thought I would.
Yeah, you as a 7-year-old probably focused a lot more on the butt crack jokes than the way that he treated women at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I was just more interested in like watching Tim like hit his head, or
get electrocuted,
the pratfalls, and then there's definitely some of that to come. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was strange to watch her get over that so quickly. But
she must know him better than you do at this point. There's either two options.
I don't think she does, Jordan. I don't think she does. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows Tim as well as I do, but yeah, I don't know. That just kind of struck me as they move past that pretty quickly.
And so she's discussing the interview that she has coming up and asks him to watch the kids, but he gets super excited about something else that he had in his mind, which was the Sears summer blowout or whatever it was.
Huge laughs. The audience, the live studio audience went nuts. They lost their when Tim references that Sears, like, and why does Tim like Sears so much? He works on a tool show. Shouldn't he have all this stuff? Like, what's so exciting about Sears?
Yeah, I mean, to me, in my head, I would think a tool guy like that would go to like more of a mom and pop, or kind of where he ends up later in the series, where he ends up going to like the local hardware store with all of his buddies.
Spoiler. Yeah, I don't know. That just struck me, and I don't know why people thought that was like you understand when the audience laughs at some of the jokes, like the butt crack jokes and stuff, but like I don't understand like what the people thought was so funny about him talking about a Sears blowout sale. Tim wants to go to Sears blowout sale. Jill has a job interview, and she needs Tim to stay home with the kids. And Tim he's not so sure about that. He's reluctant to do so, which is kind of foreshadowing for what's to follow with Tim thinking that Jill needs a job, or thinking that Jill needs to get out of the house. But eventually he does agree, and Jill asks him to do some of the chores, wash the dishes, at which Tim kind of realizes that their dishwasher is less than satisfactory. He doesn't like the fact that you have to wash the yolk off of the dishes before you put it in, which struck me as being strange because I think that's sort of just something that is implied with you need to wash dishes before you put them in the dishwasher.
I'm again on the side of Tim here, where I often do not wash, pre-wash anything before I put it in the dishwasher. I assume my dishwasher can handle it. I don't know if this says something about the 90s dishwasher, or maybe he has just an inferior dishwasher and doesn't want to believe that. But I gotta say,
you're kind of a Tim Allen apologist, or rather a Tim Taylor apologist right now. Maybe my dishwasher is very much requiring that I wash things off first, so maybe it is out of the 90s. But I don't know. It just seemed to me like he fundamentally maybe doesn't understand dishwashers. And as we go on, we learn that
he obviously doesn't.
Obviously does not understand dishwashers.
So that kind of sets up like the catalyst for what the episode's about. Jill goes to an interview. Tim wants to power up the dishwasher as he did on the episode of Tool Time. After that, Tim kind of walks outside, and this is when we get the first scene with Wilson, his next-door neighbor. Wilson is apparently very tall because he sees over this giant fence. We never really get to see Wilson's face, and he kind of has a few quirks to him. And almost immediately, Wilson analyzes what Tim really wants with this fixing up at the dishwasher. And I should say that he goes to talk to Wilson because he wants to borrow some tools, which I feel like he should have the tools that he wants.
Again, you wonder just what kind of a tool man Tim Taylor really is. And
should Wilson be hosting a show called Tool Time?
It would be a much different show. It'd be more Freudian. So he goes over there. The fence kind of is set up, the barrier between the two. Wilson, as he will throughout the series, talks to Tim. Small talk sort of evolves into something much more vast and deeper. And Wilson, this is a trivia fact, Wilson is, in the pilot episode, made to look much older than he will be in the following episodes. For whatever reason, they decided to make him look younger. So he comes over, and very quickly he understands, or thinks he understands, what the situation is, although the advice is not especially helpful, and he'll kind of backtrack from it later on, and we do have a clip of this.
A lot of men feel lost, confused. You see, Tim, the Industrial Revolution took the adult male out of the home. Boys were left without an older man to teach them how to be men. We need to get back to something more primitive, atavistic.
So it's primitive, according to Wilson. And what is Wilson? What point is he trying to make here? I don't really. I'm not sure what he expected Tim to take out of this.
Basically, since the Industrial Revolution, men have been taken out of the home as if they didn't come home at night or have the opportunity to spend time with their family on the weekend or something, and therefore have lost their central role in spreading knowledge to their sons. So that's what he's saying that Tim should do. Take this opportunity to spend time with his kids by sharing knowledge.
I feel like Wilson's the kind of guy that, like, he makes for a good TV show character, but, like, if you ever met a guy like this in real life, like, I think you would just hate him, right?
You would really take what he says with a grain of salt.
I think I would stop telling him things if he was going to just reference, like, the Industrial Revolution, like
you'd probably build your fence a little bit higher. Do you think?
It's like the worst person in, like, grad school classes. Like, Wilson is just, he's very much trying. I don't know if I believe he's smart, but it's just this. Sometimes you just want to have somebody tell you things are going to be okay and just sort of talk to you on a real basic level. But man, Wilson, he's just referencing all of these historical concepts and these deep things, and I think I would hate Wilson in real life, and it pains me to say that.
Well, we immediately see that that's way over Tim's head, because several times throughout the episode, large words are mentioned, and he says, "How do you spell that?"
Yeah.
And
which again just kills, man. When Tim doesn't know how to say asymmetrical, oh Lord.
And he uses like the words out of context, or just completely wrong. So that makes for a good trope later on.
People watching Home Improvement in 1991 would have necessarily known what asymmetrical meant either.
Well, I guess when you don't know what it means, you just start laughing.
Start
right?
laughing. That's what I do when I don't know a word. I just laugh and try to cover up my faux pas.
Well, it's a good way of handling it, I suppose. So
Tim talks to Wilson. He's got him all riled up, talking about masculinity, masculinism, as Tim says. And he goes back in. He's gonna fix the dishwasher. He's gonna improve it. He's gonna make it better, more powerful. And he tries to recruit the three boys to do so, but he quickly loses them when he talks about what he references the taking off of the shirts and.
yeah, part of Wilson's advice was that men used to, I believe, like dance naked around fire. So Tim mentions something about like it's either we fix this dishwasher together or we dance naked. And the two older kids, Brad and Randy, immediately just take off upstairs at this very strange remark by their father. But by the time that Tim turns around, he sees that Mark is game and has already taken off his shirt and is ready to go.
Yeah, and that was the first laugh I had in this episode. I genuinely thought that was like when the camera cuts to Mark and he's shirtless. I got a kick out of that.
Yeah, Mark plays the unknowing kid in the cute card pretty well in this episode. So
yeah, and like I said, and I've talked about this, like up until this point in the episode, there's not a lot of good that we see out of Tim. I mean, if you think about what he's done, there's not a lot of likable qualities. He's watching himself on TV. He's upset that his wife has a job interview and he has to watch the kids. He doesn't listen to her with regards to the dishwasher. So, I mean, I was not really on board with Tim until kind of this scene in his bonding with Mark. Mark has his shirt off. Tim takes his shirt off, which at first I was like, that's sort of, I don't know. I guess like my first inclination, which is like very 2016, whatever, is like, oh, that's creepy. But I actually ended up finding that scene to be pretty endearing. Like the two of them, shirtless, kind of grunting. I don't know. It felt like a real sort of father and son relationship to me.
yes, yep, absolutely. And we have a clip of kind of the father-son grunt fest that goes on, which I think will kind of explain a little bit more, or at least
I don't think it's going to explain anything.
well, at least it'll give some context to what you're talking about. Definitely. Otherwise, people are just going to have to envision Mark and Tim Allen grunting. And
you don't want to have to speculate when you can hear it yourself.
No, let's not let your imagination run wild there. So we're going to play that.
All right. Sit down there. All right, first off, let's see their muscles.
So you see Mark and Dad there kind of doing an adorable grunt fest, and then Tim kind of does a rite of passage in a way by giving his first tool belt to Mark, and they kind of set in.
Scene. I thought it was very sweet. I really enjoyed this.
Very heartwarming. So they kind of move on to the next phase of preparing to fix the dishwasher. So they go to Sears, they get the Blastmaster compressor. Tim is trying to teach Mark about fuse boxes, and you kind of see the classic father not wanting to really admit his mistakes to his son, look good in front of his son, which results in Tim basically getting an electrical burn and shocked. So it's not a great result. But after that's taken care of, Jill comes home from an interview.
First, the phone rings, right? And so Tim is with Mark, and they're working on it. Tim gets zapped, and the phone rings, and he answers. And oddly enough, it's perhaps just minutes after the interview with Jill takes place. She's informed via phone call that she has not gotten the job, and Tim is on the phone, and he's visibly saddened by it. And Mark's right there. And this struck me as being not only, I mean, the fact that, and I know that these things happen to drive a plot home, and that you have to compress things for the sake of time, and 21 minutes is not a lot of time. But and it not only was it odd that sort of the phone call happened minutes after the interview took place, it was strange to me that Tim felt the need to tell his 7-year-old son that their mom did not get the job. But he does, and they're both saddened. And then Jill comes home and go ahead and resume.
Yeah, so after that point, Tim's kind of sitting out in the yard after a job well done.
Or so he thinks.
Yeah, or so he believes. Jill comes home and she's chipper, she's happy, she thinks she did really great, which kind of adds to the agony of Tim knowing the truth of what happened. So before he breaks the news, he kind of wants to shield her from that, and he wants to show her the improvements that he made, even though he wasn't supposed to, on the dishwasher.
The home improvements?
The home improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, well done. So he puts a dish, the previously mentioned yolk dish, into the dishwasher, starts that bad boy up, and immediately the back of the counter explodes, which I will say that this seems like pretty good special effects for this show. So I will say, I will mention that those stood up pretty well. I thought so. It wasn't anything too flashy, but they probably didn't have a giant budget for, I would say, explosions on Home Improvement in the 90s. So I thought that went pretty well. Fine. Well, tell me about your special effects thoughts.
I don't know. I was thinking the opposite. Like, it's all just like quick bursts of smoke and then like Tim reacting. Like when he gets zapped earlier in the episode, I don't know. I don't think that those were especially well done. But maybe I'm just like.
I will say our expectations might have differed. Yeah. It's not going to be Transformers. Let's just say that.
I'm living in an era with like Avengers, Age of Ultron, and things like that. So I guess that maybe I just expected too much. But.
So let's get back to the dishwasher here. There was a loud explosion. The kids kind of run down, trying to see what happened, and Jill quickly shoos them upstairs so they don't step on any broken glass or anything like that. She's visibly upset, but to add to her being upset, Mark kind of spills the beans that she didn't get the job, which was information Tim was withholding. She then gets more upset, starts picking up the trash around the house, and kind of goes on a mini rant saying she wants to work. She feels like she can work, but no one will hire her. She wants to have a job outside of, or a life outside of the house. And Tim misunderstands kind of her intentions of even going on the job interview to begin with. I
don't know that he does misunderstand. Like, first of all, like, yeah, it was. I don't know. Tim, I definitely find Tim to be more likable as the episode goes along, but, like, I don't think that Tim wants Jill to work because, like, I think that he wants to think that, like, he can be the sole breadwinner. Like, I guess he just doesn't understand that she is sort of bored with the situation and that she sort of just wants a life outside of the house. But, like, I don't know if he misunderstands. You think he misunderstands? Or do you think...
You just said that he didn't understand.
Oh. I mean, okay, well, then I didn't mean... I feel like he's being selfish here, I guess, is sort of like what I'm getting at here. Like, I don't know that he misunderstands... I guess he's just not taking her feelings into account. I don't...
His lens is myopic. He's just kind of thinking from his own point of view. He doesn't really see... He doesn't understand why she wouldn't enjoy being at home with the kids, I guess, taking care of the house, all that kind of stuff, where she has kind of aspirations that are different than that.
I will say that, like, I think that this Tim, like, not wanting to tell Jill, like, Jill coming home and, like, being just, like, so over the moon, like, she thought that she had, you know, just really excelled in the interview, and she was very confident that she was going to get the job, and, like, Tim's inclination to not want to tell her right away, like, I thought that felt like, that's something that I think would actually happen. Like, I could see, like, a husband wrestling with telling someone he loves that, especially after hearing, like, she was so happy and so pleased, like, him not wanting to tell her, like, felt like very, like, human to me, and I thought that was pretty well done. For me, this episode, it was like a real tug of war, like, my thoughts on Tim, like, because, like I said, I thought I was gonna, like, I think of Tim Allen as being, like, a great television character, and I think that he is, but, like, it was just strange for me, and as, like, a little bit, well, not a little bit older, a lot older, to sort of just, like, think about sort of the implications of, like, their marriage.
Yeah, and I'm not shocked that I do think he misunderstood her, and I'm not shocked by that, because I think that's a real fight and situation that couples get into all the time.
Yeah, and we should say you are married.
We should say that. Yeah, I think that is.
Have you ever have you found yourself in a situation like, has this dishwasher thing ever happened to you or something along those lines?
Well, I don't try to often soup up my dishwasher or other mechanical devices.
Not often, but sometimes you do.
Sometimes. It doesn't go well, much like Tim Allen. But I can see him getting into an argument with his wife for the reasons that kind of Wilson explains later. That rings true to me more than anything else, not than necessarily having this situation. And we'll kind of get to what Wilson says as far as what his second advice is in a minute.
Do you think that you would see a plot like this on TV now? Or like this seems like very much like a plot in like something of the era, right? Like, I don't know that, is this something that you think you'd see on TV now?
I think a lot of TV sitcoms now, maybe not most of them, but a lot of them, if I think of like Parks and Rec, I think of like New Girl. I think of a lot of those different. The women on those shows are working women. Yeah. They're not stay-at-home moms. So that's kind of a different sort of conversation than I think you always get. Men and women and their different thought processes. That's kind of where conflict comes in on any of those shows. But I think this is a little bit unique in the 90s compared to now.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that that's why I say, like, this is very much a plot of, like, the 90s, like, where, and even, like, the decades before, like, women were not working. There was more of that stay-at-home feel. And I don't know, like, this just... You're right, though. The fundamental, like the man feeling the need to provide or thinking that, like, his wife doesn't need to work is, I guess, that's always sort of been in culture. So following their sort of fight, and Jill brings up Lisa, which would later become Heidi, but is the tool girl, Pamela Anderson Lee, that we see in the beginning. And it's sort of sloppily done. Like, she maybe notes that, like, maybe she's jealous of Lisa. Like, what did you make of that? Like, she mentions, like, that Lisa, like, that Tim has this attractive young girl around, and I don't know, that felt sort of throwaway to me. I don't know.
It did. I mean, I don't know where it came up before, and then it wasn't dwelled on or even addressed later in the episode. So it, like you said, it kind of felt throwaway, almost like it's a thought in her head that's like under the surface level that she wouldn't ever admit to, but it's there. It's one of those things that's just like there, and it just kind of comes out in word vomit.
And that I bought. Like, I mean, that seemed like a convincing, because like when you're fighting, like,
and when you're frustrated, you say things.
So following the fight, things are left very open ended. Tim finds himself outside talking to Wilson, the same fence formatting as before, right? And Wilson this time gives Tim a little better advice. He sort of, he doesn't backtrack on what he said earlier, but he perhaps notes that Tim didn't quite understand it. So he talks to Tim, and I think we have a clip of this.
You see, Tim, by nature, men are problem solvers, but Jill didn't want you to solve her problem.
She didn't?
No. She just wanted you to listen while she shared her feelings.
Just stand there and listen, wouldn't that be like not doing anything?
Sometimes the best thing you can do, Tim, is nothing.
All right, so Wilson, as you heard, Wilson talks to Tim. He says that, women want you to listen to them and talk to them and understand their feelings and just sort of try to understand them, and that Tim maybe didn't need to try to fix everything on his own. And of course, the fixing of the dishwasher is a metaphor, and tools parallel real life, etc., etc. What did you make of Wilson's advice the second time around?
It's very accurate, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. I feel like this situation has happened to me before, where I hear an issue, and instead of just saying, I understand, or that sucks, like, you could just say that sucks, and that would be better than you going in and being like, well, you should do this. And that's kind of what Tim does. So that rang true to me, like 100%. Like, that really happens. That's happened to me, and I'm sure that happens to guys everywhere.
So following the advice, again, we're back on the tool time set, just as we were in the beginning, and Tim is preparing to, he's sort of launching into a diatribe. Al is not there, which is strange and not necessarily what we'll see later on. But Tim is working his way towards an apology for Jill, and again, we have a clip of this.
People often ask me, they say, Tim, why is your show so darn popular?
tell you what I think. I think that working with your hands puts you in touch with something primitive, almost atavistic. It's almost like reclaiming the male spirit, if you will. And I think you know where I'm headed with this one. I'm talking about masculinism. A flat-out, big pectoral, look at my deltoids, hairy-chested celebration of men. But this wouldn't be anti-female. No, it's all wrong to think that. Just like this sander vibrates in harmony with the grain of the wood, we men should learn how to vibrate in harmony with our wives.
So in that apology, Tim kind of sets up Home Improvement not just as like a show for improving, stuff around the house, yard work, whatever. It's kind of a show for male improvement, I would say, where you can, I don't know that he intends that, but that's what comes out, where he kind of gives advice to men everywhere, but also it's obviously veiled as an apology to his wife.
Yeah, it was. That was good. I liked the final speech, and I thought it was really cool him putting on the jacket and sort of walking out and Tool Time ending. And then, again, the cutting back to the living room. Jill is watching it, and she's satisfied and she's pleased, and there are some jokes. But it's a sweet ending. I thought that his final sort of speech there was quite good. I enjoyed that. I thought that was a good thesis statement for the episode. Definitely building up to that, and I thought it paid off.
Definitely. I would agree. And kind of moving on to overall impressions or general thoughts about the episode, I would say the pilot kind of mirrored a lot of what you would see in the future. It did a good job of setting what you would see as far as kind of Jill in this man's world. She's surrounded by three boys and Tim, and trying to navigate that and kind of her own aspirations of a career. You see a lot of like the same tropes that you're going to see throughout the series with Tim's grunts and Tim trying to use more power, all that kind of stuff. So I thought the pilot did a pretty good job.
When I first watched it, I was a little bit disappointed. It wasn't as funny as I thought it was going to be. I think talking about something and thinking about it more, it's actually made me probably like the pilot a bit more. If I were to sort of consider like the highs of the episode, I thought that Tim's scenes with Mark and sort of the father-son bonding was pretty well done. And I thought Mark was just, as far as like a child actor, like I thought that he did really well. And the scenes with Wilson, okay, but I did really like the ending to the episode. Not the actual ending, which we should mention briefly, but the ending where, he's the cutting between the Home Improvement show and watching Tool Time. I thought that was just well done. I like that sort of as bookends to the episode. And I don't know if that's something that they do a lot of later on or not. I guess we'll see. But I like that. I thought that was nice. His final speech and his apology, and him sort of playing coy. I bought her accepting his apology, and I just thought that was a nice scene. I did not think that the actual ending to the episode, where it's sort of, I guess, like Jill sort of says that she wants to have sex with Tim in the garage, and he takes his shirt off and he goes out there, and then he gets locked out, and then the dishwasher maintenance man comes. And what do you make of that dishwasher maintenance man? Yeah,
and I had a DVD where I actually watched the commentary from the executive producers, and they said that these at the end, after the normal resolution of the episode, these were two scenes that they wanted to include, but they didn't have time for. So that almost makes more sense to me about like why it didn't really fit in into the normal framework and timing of the episode. But they are pretty ridiculous. You have like the service repairman coming, and he sees Tim run around the house, and he's basically got his tool belt on and a towel on, and he's like knocking on the door. And at first the serviceman is like dismayed and like, who is this crazy guy? But then he recognizes him as Tim the Toolman Taylor, and he's like totally okay with it. He's like waving to him and happy. And so that was kind of a strange turn of events to end. Yeah.
It felt really tagged on. Like I would have just liked the ending better if they would have just kept like the sentimental thing. But like the end,
just done like credits with music at the end or
like
something.
He runs around, and the final shot is like him banging on the glass door like with his shirt off, and it's not especially funny. And This is something that I'm sure we'll talk about later on, but like I never really like how famous is Tim? Like it's sort of like it reminds me of like Louis or like I don't know another show, Marin or like any show where like someone's playing like sort of like a celebrity. Like how famous are we supposed to think Tim is? Like this guy who's like a dishwasher guy knows him presumably because he's like interested in tools, but like how famous do you think Tim is? Like how is he a celebrity? Like is he locally famous or is he nationally famous?
I mean, he's got to be on some level nationally famous because later in the series we see Bob Vila and that kind of like natural rivalry that he produces, and that they have to know about each other, I guess. So maybe they're on the same level of fame. I think we all know how popular Bob Vila is.
Yeah, Bob Vila has 1 million Twitter followers, and we know because we Home Impodcast is following him on Twitter. We're yet to get a follow back, but hashtag goals.
Give it time. Give it time.
We'll see. So yeah, good pilot. Not maybe as funny as I thought it was going to be, but definitely the seedlings are there for the series, and we see a lot of the tropes, the archetypes, and sort of just what is to come is very much in this episode. Minus the Al character and the children. The two older children are not as prominent as well. But yeah, any final thoughts on that for you?
No, I think you covered it all, and I think we should move into the next segment, which is looking at user reviews.
User reviews.
The first user review we want to mention from IMDb was published January 13th, 2014, so relatively recently, by Callan Voss, and it's entitled "Watch Out for Those Electrical Shocks." And it's long, but I just want to read the middle part. So Callan Voss states, "I love Home Improvement. I've seen quite a few episodes of this show. I'd watch it whenever I would see it on. This is the pilot, and it's a damn good one. Tim Allen's smartass persona is hilarious. Patricia Richardson provides the perfect balance as the wife. Even the kids are fun to watch. I laughed my ass off whenever an electrical shock came near Tim. Wait until you see Mark take Tim's facetious suggestion about fixing the dishwasher naked. I won't reveal what happens, but it is a screamer." So that's Callan Voss. Do you want to take on the next one?
Yeah. So the next one was written also relatively recently, 2013, entitled "A Man in His Dish" by Explorer DS6789. And it starts out, "Meet Tim Taylor, not your average man, but rather your average man with more power," which, I mean, I would say he's pretty average, even without the power, but that's fine. And then they go on to describe the best way to describe Tim on Tool Time is to imagine Bob Vila, who we mentioned earlier, crossed with Daffy Duck, which I thought was a funny image. And they kind of finish up their review with something to keep everyone interested. It says, "Stay tuned because there's plenty more wackiness on the way."
And right they are, Explorer. Mm-hmm. Our final IMDb review comes from Sean Labe 1. It was written November 4th, 2009, and it's objectively titled, "An extremely well-written start to the best show in television history!" 3 exclamation points. And warning, this review may contain spoilers. Home Improvement is the best show ever. That's completely obvious and goes without saying. The pilot episode was no different and set up all the main plot ideas for the series, just like a great pilot episode is supposed to do. And the person goes on and on. I want to skip down to the bottom. Most pilot episodes are not that great, and you can usually tell when it's the pilot of a TV show when you're watching it. But Home Improvement's pilot was so great that when I finished it, I didn't even know it was the first episode. That's how amazing it was. So that's Sean Labe from 2009. So those are our 3 user reviews from IMDb. Generally pretty positive, and I think that we were fairly positive on the episode too. Fair to say?
I would agree. Just general good feelings all around from IMDb and us.
Yes. Next time on Home Impodcast, we'll be covering Mo Better Blues, MOW, and that is assuredly a pun. If you want to get in touch with us in the meantime, we are on Twitter at Home Impodcast. We have a Tumblr page, homeimpodcast.tumblr.com, where we can be reached via Gmail, homeimpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Please spread the word. We hope to see you next week. Jordan, I will talk to you then.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And if you do want to leave any reviews on iTunes, that would be great. So please look at doing that, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
You too.